The waves outside the harbor hit the rocks with a dull rhythm, like an old clock ticking. I sat there on the bench, my grandson beside me, both of us watching the sea turn copper under the sunset. He broke the silence first. "Grandpa, what was it like being out there? You know, when you were captain?" I gave a low chuckle. Being captain isn't what boys imagine it to be. It's not all shouting orders and looking heroic on the bow. Most of the time, it's responsibility, heavy as an anchor. He leaned in closer, waiting. I took a breath, the smell of salt and seaweed filling my lungs, and let the memory come back. It was the winter of '78. I was 26, a captain younger than most of my crew. We were hauling steel across the Atlantic. Small freighter, stubborn engines, and a handful of men who trusted me more than I trusted myself. That's when the storm found us. I paused, and for a moment I could still hear it. The wind, the groaning hull, the ocean turning wild. We left New York under gray skies. Nothing unusual for that time of year. The cargo sat heavy in the hold, and the men joked on deck, their laughter cutting through the cold wind. They were young, most of them just a few years older than you are now. I try to hide my nerves behind a steady face. A captain doesn't show doubt, not if he wants his crew to sleep at night. But inside, I was running numbers, speed, distance, fuel weather reports. The math never lies, but the sea doesn't always care about math. 2 days out, the radio crackled. A warning: severe weather forming in the North Atlantic. We were told to consider holding course or turning back. The shipping company's message came soon after. Cargo must arrive on schedule. That was the moment I felt the weight of command. Do we press on into the unknown, or admit weakness and return to port? I remember standing on the bridge, staring at that endless horizon. The sea looked calm enough, but I knew better. She was only pretending to be asleep. And I made my choice. The third night, the sea changed its face. The horizon vanished, swallowed by low black clouds. The wind picked up, whistling through the rigging like a warning I couldn't ignore. By midnight, the ship was already rolling harder than she should. Plates clattered in the galley. Ropes groaned against the strain. I could feel the hull shiver beneath my boots with every wave. One of my men, Davis, came up to the bridge. He was 29, a joker by nature, but his face was pale. "Captain, this storm's got teeth. We won't outrun her." I gave him a look that said, "I know, but a captain's job isn't to panic with the crew. Double-check the lashings. Make sure the hatches are sealed. Tell the men to keep low and keep sharp." He nodded, though I could see the fear behind his eyes. We all felt it. The first wave slammed the bow not long after. Water burst over the deck like a cannon shot, knocking a man flat before he scrambled back up. The storm had arrived, and it wasn't giving us a chance to breathe. The storm hit us head-on. The freighter pitched and groaned like a wounded animal. Every time the bow climbed, it felt like we were scaling a mountain. And every time we dropped, it was as if the ocean was trying to swallow us whole. I gripped the wheel tighter than I should have. My knuckles went white, but I didn't let go. A captain doesn't let go. On deck, the men fought the storm as best they could. Some bailed water, some secured cargo, others just held on for dear life. Every shout was ripped away by the wind. Orders became hand signals, frantic gestures in the chaos. A crate snapped loose, smashing across the deck. It nearly took out 2 men before they managed to pin it down. My heart slammed in my chest. Not from the storm, but from knowing one mistake, one hesitation, and we'd lose someone. In that moment, it wasn't about cargo, money, or schedules. It was about survival. Mine. Theirs. All of us. And I realized something the storm always makes clear. The sea doesn't care who you are. Captain, crew, king, or beggar, it treats you the same. The wind howled like 1,000 wolves. Rain stung my face, blinding me in bursts. I barely noticed Davis again until I heard the shout. "Man over!" It wasn't overboard. Not yet, but close enough. I spun and saw him. Ramirez, the youngest on the crew, clinging to a slick rope that had come loose. A wave had thrown him across the deck, and now half his body dangled over the rail. One slip, and the sea would claim him. 2 men scrambled to pull him back, but the deck tilted, and another wave crashed over them. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd lost him. Instinct took over. I left the wheel to my first mate, grabbed the nearest line, and threw myself toward them. My boots slid across the soaked steel, but I reached him just as his grip gave out. I locked one arm around the railing, the other around Ramirez's wrist. His eyes were wide, terrified like a boy's. "Hold, damn it!" I shouted, though I don't know if he heard me over the storm. Together, with the others pulling, we dragged him back to the deck. He collapsed, coughing seawater, shaking like a leaf. I looked at him, then at the men around us. That's when I saw it. They weren't just afraid of the storm anymore. They were looking at me, waiting, and in their eyes, I saw it clear. Their lives were mine to keep, or to lose. The sea wasn't done with us. Not by a long shot. After we pulled Ramirez back, the storm seemed to double its fury, as if the ocean itself was angry we had snatched one soul away. The waves grew taller, walls of black water smashing against the bow, each one sounding like thunder when it hit. The ship shuddered with every blow. Steel groaned, bolts rattled, and the deck plates trembled under my boots. I knew ships had limits, and this one was close to hers. In the wheelhouse, the glass rattled in its frame. Water seeped through the seams, dripping onto the floor. My first mate, McAllister, shot me a glance. He didn't need to say it. The question was all over his face. How much longer can we last? I clenched my jaw and kept my eyes forward. "She'll hold," I said, though even I didn't believe it fully. The men below deck worked like demons, pumping out water, tying down cargo, fighting a losing battle. I could hear their shouts carried up through the vents, swallowed by the storm. For a moment, I let the thought creep in. What if we don't make it? What if this is where my story ends? Not in glory, but in a cold grave at the bottom of the Atlantic. But then another wave hit, hard enough to throw me against the console, and the fear burned away into something sharper: determination. If the sea wanted to take us, she'd have to fight for every damn inch. It came without warning, the wave that swallowed the horizon. I was on the bridge when I saw it rise, taller than anything I'd ever faced at sea. A black wall, foaming at the crest, blotting out what little light there was. For half a second, I felt small. Smaller than a man should ever feel. "Brace!" I roared, gripping the rail as the ship climbed. Engines screamed, metal strained, and the deck tilted so steep I thought we'd flip. Then it hit. The wave crashed over us with the force of a mountain falling. Glass shattered. The bridge went dark. Men were thrown off their feet, some sliding across the deck, some clinging to whatever they could find. I heard Ramirez scream, then silence. Cold seawater slammed into me, knocking the breath out of my lungs. For a moment, I was underwater, inside my own ship. The sea had invaded her belly. I fought to the surface, coughing, blinded by salt and smoke. The emergency lights flickered red, casting everything in a hellish glow. Somewhere below, the engine stuttered, then roared back to life, refusing to quit. I dragged myself upright, hands shaking, chest burning. My men looked to me again, their faces pale, dripping, terrified, and I shouted over the storm. "She's still afloat. As long as she floats, we fight." The truth? I didn't know if we'd see morning, but I wasn't about to let the sea take us without a damn war. The ship groaned like an old beast, battered but still alive. Water sloshed knee-deep across the deck, carrying ropes, tools, even a broken chair from the mess. The men were soaked, shivering, coughing up seawater, but they were still standing. McAllister limped up to me, his forehead bleeding from a gash. "She can't take much more, Captain." I looked at him, then at the men dragging pumps into place, tying down what cargo was left, hauling Ramirez back to his feet. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide, but their hands never stopped moving. "They're not done yet," I said. "Neither is she." Hour by hour, the storm kept hammering us. But something had changed. Maybe it was the way the men worked together, wordless like parts of one machine. Maybe it was the way the ship answered the waves, no longer bucking wildly, but settling into the rhythm of survival. I could feel it. The storm was losing patience. The winds screamed less. The waves broke with less bite. The sky cracked open now and then, letting through slivers of moonlight. We weren't safe. Not yet. But for the first time in days, I thought we might live to tell the story. I leaned on the rail, chest aching, and whispered to the sea. Not this time. By dawn, the sea had finally remembered mercy. The wind eased into heavy sighs, the waves shrinking from mountains to hills. The clouds tore apart, and pale strips of light stretched across the horizon. After days of chaos, the silence felt almost unnatural. I stood on the bridge, boots still wet, uniform stiff with salt. My men moved slowly, like old men, their bodies aching, their eyes hollow. But they moved, and that was victory enough. Ramirez, the boy we nearly lost, leaned against the railing, staring at the sunrise. His lips were cracked, his hands raw, but when he saw me looking, he managed the smallest grin. I gave him a nod. The deck was a mess. Ropes tangled, crates smashed, half the equipment ruined. But the ship was afloat. Against all odds, she was still ours. McAllister came up beside me. His voice was hoarse. We made it. I didn't answer right away. I kept my eyes on the horizon, where the sun rose like a promise. Then I said the only words that mattered. We made it. And for the first time since the storm began, I let myself believe it. We limped into port 3 days later. The harbor looked almost unreal. Calm waters, gulls circling lazily in the sky, fishermen shouting on the docks. For us, it was like stepping into another world. The storm still roared in our bones, but here, life carried on as if nothing had happened. My crew stood straighter when we tied down. Their uniforms were torn, their faces gaunt, but in their eyes burned a quiet pride. They had stared death in the face and refused to blink. Then the company man arrived. Suit pressed, shoes polished, clipboard in hand. He didn't ask about the storm. He didn't ask if we had lost anyone. His only question was, did the cargo arrive intact? I bit down on my tongue, so hard I tasted blood. The answer was yes. Most of it survived, though it had nearly cost us everything. My men exchanged glances, their pride colliding with the reality of being just another nameless crew in someone else's ledger. As the man signed off the papers and walked away without so much as a nod, McAllister muttered under his breath, "We bled for boxes." He wasn't wrong. But when I looked at my men, battered yet standing tall, I knew the truth. The cargo wasn't what mattered. It was them. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than gold. The old man paused, staring into his glass of rum, as if the storm still churned inside it. "You know, lad," he said finally, his voice rough but steady, "that voyage taught me the only lesson worth remembering at sea. Cargo rots, ships break, money slips through your fingers faster than water. But men are all you've got." He leaned closer, eyes locking onto his grandson's. "A captain's real treasure isn't what's in the hold. It's the crew who'll tighten the ropes in the middle of hell itself, who'll curse your name but still follow you into the storm. Without them, you're nothing but a fool sitting on driftwood." The grandson sat quietly, almost reverent. He had heard plenty of his grandfather's tales before, but none carried this weight. The old man gave a tired smile, one born of battles long survived. "So when you face your storms, and you will, remember that. Don't measure your worth by what you haul. Measure it by the men who stand with you when the waves are higher than your hope." The fire crackled, filling the silence that followed. For a moment, the young man thought he could hear the sea itself outside the window, as if it had been listening all along. When the sea finally calmed, we limped our way back to port. The ship looked like a wounded beast, railings twisted, deck planks cracked, and half the cargo lost to the waves. Yet we were alive, and in those days, that was all that mattered. The harbor men stared at us as if ghosts had walked off that vessel. A few shook their heads, muttering that no ship that battered should have made it back at all. My crew didn't say much, but I could see it in their eyes. The storm had marked them, same as me. That night, as I lay in my bunk, I realized something. The sea had tested me harder than any man ever could. And though I carried the scars of that storm, I also carried a strange pride. I had stood my ground, and the ocean had spared me. Weeks later, when the ship was patched and the crew had gone their separate ways, I found myself walking along the docks alone. The gulls cried above, the tide slapped against the pilings, and every sound reminded me of that storm. A young sailor stopped me once and asked if it was true that I'd faced down waves taller than the mast and lived to tell about it. I just gave a half smile and said, "The sea always tells the taller tale, son. Don't believe everything you hear." But inside, I knew the truth. We had stared into the abyss, and it had stared back. Still, I kept returning to the water because that's what men like me do. We don't run from the sea. We just learn to respect our moods. Years rolled on, and storms came and went, but none ever struck me the way that one did. Not because it was the worst, though it was close, but because it showed me who I was when stripped of every comfort, every illusion of control. Now, sitting here with you, lad, I can still feel the salt stinging my eyes and the deck trembling under my boots. But I also remember the men, brave, stubborn, half-mad perhaps, who refused to give up. We didn't just survive the storm. We survived it together. That, more than the waves or the wind, is what I carry with me. So here I am, an old sailor with more scars than stories left to tell. The sea nearly claimed me that night, but also gave me something no calm harbor ever could. Respect. Respect for the ocean, respect for the men who stood by me, and respect for life itself. And when you, lad, face your own storm one day, not with sails and ropes, but with choices and burdens, remember this. The sea doesn't care who you are. But if you stand tall, keep your course, and trust those beside you, you'll come out stronger on the other side. That's the truth the ocean taught me. And that's the truth I now pass to you.